Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Live Ukulele After Hours. It is actually Saturday. I'm kind of thinking of this after hours thing as going in between every normal episode, and so it's actually the Saturday that this episode should be coming out. So maybe I'll even upload this tonight, and it will be sort of on time in a lazy sort of way. I hope you're all well out there. It's been kind of an interesting week. My computer died yesterday, sort of, kind of, so I'm recording this on my trusty old MacBook. The MacBook is actually what I recorded my last album on, and it's still going pretty strong. It still does the trick for the most part, and it's sure nice to have as a backup when the main rig is being kind of a butthead. So hopefully a new processor will fix the problem and I'll be back in business. But in the meantime, here we are with good old GarageBand, and we'll see what we can get out of GarageBand, which has come a long ways over the years, I must say. I kind of used GarageBand a lot in the early days. Certainly when I was in school, we got iPads at Institute of Hawaiian Music, and we had a little recording dock that we did some recording on our iPads with, and I got a little Apogee Jam at one point. And that was really, it did the trick. It was fine. Learned a lot from using that program, but it was sort of limited, sort of clunky, and it seems like there's a lot more mixing options these days, and it's a little bit more, I guess they've brought it up to speed to be more like Logic, which to my understanding, Logic is more like it's kind of like a grown-up GarageBand. I don't use Logic, and I never have, but it's supposed to be great. The guys who love it, and yeah, it just goes to show that with a built-in simple program, you can really do amazing things, and I don't think there's any reason that you couldn't get a fabulous recording out of some really simple gear and GarageBand these days. However, it does take some know-how to make it all work. I saw somebody say the other day that, any 9-year-old kid or something in their bedroom could record a world-class recording, and I have to say that's not the case. You can get a nice clean sound with some cheap gear, no doubt, but to get that real pristine recording and then to mix it up to a point where it sounds good, that takes some practice and some skill. And I mean, I'm certainly probably not the most genius person when it comes to this kind of thing, but I'm just getting to the point where I feel pretty comfortable turning the knobs and making it sound like I want it to. But since it's so, I'm kind of out of my element. I got all my normal stuff just plugged into the laptop, but I don't have my normal setup that I've been using for the past couple of years going on here. So I'm a little out of my element, and I just got one mic, and I'll move it around when I want you to hear my ukulele. I haven't played a whole lot this week. It's just one of those weeks where it hasn't been super interesting, but there was a couple good jams in there, good times. Let's see if I can come up with something to float my boat and hopefully your boat. I realized just the other day that I've been playing in a lot of easy keys, and I think that because I'm playing in easy keys, I'm losing some of my chops in keys that are less friendly. So I've been making a point to play in C sharp and B and F sharp just to make myself work harder and think, because it's easy to play. I don't know. It's easy to play in C for the most part. All the things that are readily provided to you just because of the ukulele's tuning, they're fairly easy to access. And I want to be able to get those same sounds in kind of any key. So let's play in B. I'll take my feet off of the desk so I don't wiggle the microphone as I go. little waltz thing in the key of B. Something that's kind of fun to try is if you're just jamming on something is try and take out a lot of the notes and the chords that you would normally play. A lot of times, a lot of us play kind of busy, and by forcing yourself to just wait and sit in silence and like play only on the one and then wait till the next one comes around and then play something again. It kind of, it's an interesting dynamic because it forces you to feel the time and feel the space, but also to get more comfortable in that space and to be comfortable with just sitting and not doing anything. That's really where the flaw in human time is in the large spaces. And this is something I just talked about while I was filming a video or a lesson for my new course that I'm putting together. And it was basically to count in the spaces. When you don't play or when you hold a note, that's when I count. I don't necessarily recommend that everybody count all the time, though it doesn't hurt. I don't find that it's super necessary. And if you have some sort of a sense of time, you might not need to count all the time. In fact, I find that it can make it a little bit harder, although I'm sure it's just like playing with a metronome where it's distracting at first, and then once you kind of get over the learning curve and it becomes second nature, it's not a big deal. But to get in the door, it seems like it can be a little distracting. But you've got lots of brain space to spare when you're just sitting and waiting for the next note to come around. So that's where I tend to count, because otherwise the time will often collapse around that space or around the held note because you're antsy to go to the next thing. So it's always nice to try and avoid that. And by leaving spaces intentionally, you kind of are forced to feel that. And when you're mindful of leaving the space, you can sit there, I think, in a more musical way and not feel like you need to rush ahead to the next thing. But something that one of my projects this week was to take an old ukulele I had sitting around. It was actually hanging on the wall in my dad's bedroom because I thought, well, maybe he'll play it. And because my dad actually was the person who took me to my first ukulele lessons. We did a Parks and Rec class together, and for the first two classes, we both went together, and he was a good sport about it, and he got a kick out of it and enjoyed it, but I don't think it really clicked. I don't think my dad likes to not be good at things. He's gotten to a point where he's very competent at all the things he does, and he does a good job with them. And I think that, I don't know, I get the impression that for older folks, they're happy to know things and to feel like they made it to that point in life. And sometimes it's a little bit revealing or being vulnerable if they pursue something that's new and that they aren't quite as good at. So major props to everybody out there who's picking up the ukulele for the first time, or music, or any new skill, and just trying it out and, being vulnerable like that in a way that you're daring to suck at first, kind of in that first bit. So he dared to suck for those first few classes. And I keep hoping over the years that, as he's seen me improve, I think that part of it was that I took to the ukulele and I just loved it so much and I practiced all the time. There wasn't a whole lot of common ground as far as stuff we could play where he was just, doing basic stuff. And that was kind of where he peaked out. But then I was just like up and trying to learn all the things I possibly could. I think that might have been a little bit intimidating to be in the house with, perhaps. So he hasn't really played since, but with the ukulele on the wall, I thought, well, maybe he's retired now. He'll get bored and he'll pick it up and try it. But to my knowledge, that wasn't the case. So I took the ukulele off the wall and cut the strings off and cleaned it all up. This is the ukulele, my second ukulele that I bought. This was the first ukulele I bought. My folks bought the very first student model that I had. And a number of years ago at Kyoki Kahumoku's workshop, my brother played on this ukulele. And at the end of camp, instead of, I think they all signed the scholar or the workshop book, the song book, and the kind of handouts book, all the kids passed theirs around, and it was like the yearbook, but it was the workshop book, and they all signed it. But he also went the extra mile and got everybody to sign this ukulele. So it has a bunch of signatures, some I believe of folks who are no longer with us actually. And I cleaned it up and put new strings on it, and I was gonna give it to him. I don't think he's seen it in a while, and I don't know. He kind of took to it that one time we were at the workshop. He really did play a lot during the week, but hasn't done anything with it really since. So I was hoping that, maybe since he's very over COVID and, trying to be careful and do the thing and not get super crazy socially, he's a very outgoing person. I thought it might be nice for him to have something to do, so I cleaned it up. And it's fun. It's fun to hear an ukulele that sounds like this because it sounds so profoundly different than the quote nice instruments that I usually have the privilege of playing. You know what I'm talking about, Chuck. But this ukulele, it's laminate, and as far as it goes, this is a very early production model ukulele. In the early days, they were not as well made or as well quality controlled as they are now. So when you bought an ukulele, it was overall probably going to be a lot worse instrument than what you can buy today. So when people are like shopping around looking for the best ukulele for X number of dollars, I kind of laugh because it's like, well, that's so much nicer than anything I could have ever spent my money on back, whatever it was, 15 years ago when I bought this thing. But this is a Hula Ukes TK55. They probably don't even make these anymore. Collector's item. But it has a super focused sound. Just because of the laminated wood, and I don't think it's built super well, it's like it doesn't have a whole lot of resonance. It's very pointed. Here, have a listen. As opposed to I find that the laminate is, like I said, it's a lot more pointed, but it's a lot more trapped. But it also it kind of like rings at certain frequencies in a really interesting way. It's very kind of sharp in specific spots. It's almost like you're playing the ukulele through a wah-wah pedal or something, where one frequency is super super spiked and it's very focused in that one area. And then, going back to the more better, it's like, it's very rich and broad and it has a lot going for it. But that's not to say that the sound of the laminate ukulele is bad. It's just different. And this is where a lot of times I think the waters get super muddied, is that people always try and rank things, and they review ukuleles and they talk about ukuleles, and it's really a super personal thing. It's this ukulele or this laminate ukulele is probably somebody in the world thinks it's the best sounding ukulele that you could possibly get their hands on. And for some, it's not. So everybody's going to have that kind of perfect sound that they're looking for. And with so many different ukulele options, that is possible at any level in the price range. It does, just because like traditional ukulele sound that you associate with a Kamaka pineapple or whatever it might be, just because that's your vision of what the ukulele should sound like, doesn't mean it's the next guy's vision of what an ukulele should sound like, or what a pleasing musical sound is. Because just because you play a certain instrument doesn't mean there is not a different kind of timbre or a different kind of tone that you wish you could capture. I'm from, I don't know, when I was a teen, 15, 16, I discovered Eric Johnson. I was 16 because that was the year my family was back in California. I found an Eric Johnson album at the thrift store, and I brought it home and was like, oh, I've heard of this guy. He's supposed to be a killer guitarist. And my life was pretty much never the same because I just found his music, and during my teen years, that was the music that resonated with me. Is the guitar playing was absolutely out of this world and something that I really aspired to, and I practiced and studied to be able to play myself, of which I was only able to attain a very small percentage of the virtuoso playing that Eric can do. But just from a musical standpoint, that's all I listened to pretty much was his stuff all through my high school years, and I drove my friends and my family crazy and just listened to Venus Isle on repeat, and that's just what did it. But I always remember that Eric always he didn't talk about trying to find a guitar sound. He was trying to always make his guitar sound like a violin or a piano, because he felt like those were much more, that was like the sound that he wanted to be able to play, even though he was a guitarist. He's like, I like playing guitar, but I wish it sounded like a violin or a piano. And so as he was playing and as he was tweaking his gear and kind of getting his style and his fingerprint on the music, that's what he held in his head. And so I think if you're an ukulele player and you think that violin and piano are the best sounding instruments, you're going to really like a different sounding ukulele than somebody who wants their ukulele to sound like a Kamaka pineapple. It's just, you're hearing something in your head that's very different from the next guy, which is why there's no way to quantify instruments or to quantify, rankings of which is best. Like you can always talk about build quality and different facets of the ukulele, and maybe how responsive it is, or how much attention was given to it, or was it factory made, or was it hand built by somebody locally, or anything. And people can and will talk about all this stuff as if it makes a huge difference. But at the end of the day, all that really matters is that you like the sound of it and that you get to play it yourself. This is part of why I always recommend people play ukuleles in person. No exceptions unless you really super have to shop online or you aren't picky. If you're picky and you're asking all the questions and doing all the research, you should wait until you can get yourself to a music store and try every instrument there. And if you don't like any of the instruments, if they just kind of don't do it for you, wait, come back when their inventory has turned over and try it all again, because every instrument is different. I saw a really, really interesting post on Ukulele Underground the other day by Brad Donaldson, who is over on Kauai. He bought my old Kumalai ukulele to study it and take it apart or restore it and kind of see how it's built. Nice guy. He was on the podcast. I really loved talking to him on the podcast. So if you're interested in ukulele building, definitely go check that out. But he wrote a thing about like the mathematics of how the thickness of the ukulele soundboard computes to the rule of squared eighths or something like that. I was very glad he walked us through the math, because I'm not a math guy really. But the gist of it was that it's so hard to get a consistent thickness of the top, and the variables are so great that you're almost, even if you use a machine, there's going to be variations in the top, and even the slightest variation, just a hair of a variation, can really super change the responsiveness and the stiffness of the top, and therefore the sound. So basically what he was trying to say, from my understanding, was that no two ukuleles are ever going to sound the same, just because there's that little tiny bit of variation that there might be between ukuleles, even in the same model line. Is even factory-made ukuleles in the same model line that are made with a machine time after time after time, the same exact ukulele, they're going to sound a little bit different. Excuse me. But it's just so interesting that we try and it all comes back to, I always talk about the Western mindset, and then you contrast that with like the Eastern mindset of just, it's now. It's just like doing the thing just as, as the practice. And yeah, just, I don't know. When you start shopping for the ukuleles, trying to think about it too much is, I won't say pointless, but it doesn't have a whole lot of merit on the outcome of the instrument. At least not nearly as much as people might dedicate to said factor, perhaps. Maybe I'm just digging myself a verbal hole, but that's sort of my takeaway, is that you really just need to play the instrument, and what anybody says is only their interpretation. That's all it is their interpretation, their experience, what they hear in their ears. Everybody hears things differently, and trying to base what you want to hear off of somebody else's experience or biases in their hearing, that's kind of tough. And it's not something I would put a whole lot of weight to. I've met people in my teaching who have certain ukuleles, and they're always so proud of their instruments. And, for some reason, people seem to want my approval, or just in general instructors' approval, better players' approval of their instruments. So they often pass them around. It's like, oh, what do you think? And, of course, it's like, you shouldn't care what I think. What do you think? If you think it's great, that's awesome. But a lot of times I'll pick up these instruments and I'll play these instruments, and they are super meh. They're not special. They don't sound good. They don't play good. But this person is so excited about it, and they like it, and they think it's the greatest thing in the world. It doesn't matter what I think at all. If this makes you happy, if this makes you want to play, that is all that matters. And everybody else should go jump in a lake if they want to try and tell you what you should want. It's not how it works. Let's see. I got my metronome looking me right in the eye, so maybe I'll turn it on and try and capture something. We'll go a little fast today. What key? where am I? I don't know what was going on there. Just a vibe. You can go so far with just a vibe, no matter what you're doing, whether it be music or life or anything in between. You just kind of catch that wave and see what you can find in there. And especially with music, especially when you're jamming and kind of finding new things, I won't necessarily say practicing, kind of playing, somewhere in between. But especially when you're looking for new things, it's kind of like, I don't know, fresh grounds for finding unique stuff. And if you land on something that feels unfamiliar, it's nice to play it repeatedly or something that you haven't played in a while that feels like it's sort of on the edge of your chops, or especially if you're with a metronome and you're kind of not able to play on time and off the beat. Like when I was doing this thing, I could kind of feel that was out of shape, so to speak. And so I didn't want to stay on the same exact thing forever. But if I was just doing my own thing and I wasn't trying to make a sort of casual podcast, I might have stayed on that longer to get the practice of playing that rhythm and becoming adjusted to that rhythm stronger than I was before I had started the little jam. It's so hard to know if the GarageBand has saved. That's something I've never really liked about Mac, is that whether you're working in iMovie or GarageBand, it's like, did it actually save? I can't tell. With iMovie, there is no save. You just work on your thing and it automatically saves it. That's very confusing to me. I don't necessarily vibe with that. That's why I'm on Windows now. So many things that I get to control, whether they're better or worse. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, I've been thinking a lot about trust in regards to ukulele and kind of teaching and how it relates to our interactions as players and people who are interested in learning. And that, especially with the kind of modern social media age where everybody gets fed the content that they want to see, not necessarily all of the content that is actually happening. You're only seeing what the algorithm shows you, so those are curated things that tend to be what the algorithm predicts you're going to interact with. And so these things tend to show us posts or news articles or products that it thinks we're going to engage with. And so that mindset and the kind of culture and psychological, that's the word I'm looking for, the psychological impact of that is that we get very used to our biases being confirmed. They call it confirmation bias. And so with that culture in regards to music, it's very much a departure from kind of the way of learning music and the way of interacting that I grew up in, especially at Kyoki's workshops and even going to school. We were going to school in 2012 and 2013, and social media hadn't super duper taken hold like it has nowadays. But it seemed like there was a lot more room for curiosity and actually like an actual interest in hearing what somebody else had to share. Like I very much remember meeting people at the workshop or in school and like asking them active questions because I was curious and I wanted to know what they had to share and how that kind of fit with my model of the world that I had in my head. And I think that the room for that curiosity questioning is shrinking because people are more and more used to hearing just confirmation of their beliefs or what they think is how the world is. So if I'm a modern day ukulele player and I think that koa ukuleles are the best sounding ukuleles and somebody's asking about and I'm going to go shop for an ukulele and I ask somebody, oh, what do you think is the ukulele I should be buying? There's sort of a part of the modern psychology that doesn't necessarily want to hear anything besides what you want to hear. And so if they say something like, oh, I think that the best ukulele is a cheap outdoor ukulele made out of plastic, you as the confirmation biased koa enthusiast is going to lean away. You're going to pull back from that. And there's not going to be as much room, I don't think, for that interest of, wow, this person really thinks that the the best ukulele I can buy is an outdoor plastic ukulele. I wonder why. Instead of just closing it off, I think we should really try, and especially with music, certainly with everything else as well, but certainly try and, keep the doors open when it comes to a disagreement or something that kind of conflicts with your understanding of the world or your understanding of music. Don't pull back from it. Try and lean in and try and understand why, because everybody has their own little world that they live in, and everybody's world is valid, and in their world, whatever their truth is, it means something to them, and it's their truth. So for it to be their truth, it's got to be somewhat relevant or somewhat, it's got to have some merit, I guess. And so to completely cut out all these possible different realities that you could be looking into and being curious about, try and just keep an open mind and ask questions and allow yourself to be curious, and don't just hold yourself to what you know and what you want to hear. Because the more and more I learn about music, the less and less sure I am of anything regarding music. It's, I think my friend Huala always quoted somebody. I don't remember who exactly it was. It might have been like Alan Watts or Joseph Campbell or somebody. But he said that every sentence should end with maybe, or every statement should end with maybe. If you say something as a statement, Koa is the best ukulele wood, maybe. If you add that maybe, it's a lot more accurate, because there are no absolutes with music. And I think that's an important part of any conversations that you have. And I think you learn a lot faster when you're kind of opening the doors and the possibilities of finding new things out. You're going to be able to see a lot more perspectives faster than if you're kind of just only trucking along on your own version of what you think music is. Because especially if you're like a beginner, or you have your own limited world of what you do or what you think is great, you're not going to, if you're not receptive to what I have to share from my experience, or what the next guy has to share from his experience, you're not going to be able to internalize those things and use them for your own personal growth as readily or as easily. That's just something I've been kind of pondering and thinking and realizing, is that everybody is really hung up a lot on being right, or propping up what they think is the truth. And that's fine. Everybody's gonna do their own thing. But especially as far as music goes, I think it's extremely limiting. And when you can have a more curious mind, I recall Jimi Hendrix saying that every show that he went to, even if it was total garbage and he really didn't like the show, he always tried to think of one good thing that the person was doing. Like, what's one thing I can learn from this experience that I'm having that I can apply to my music? And I think that that's something that I get the impression it's fading. I don't want to say that it is fading, because I don't know. But it seems, just from the interactions that I see, that a lot of times people are looking more for a confirmation of what they think than actually having curiosity and wanting to have a discussion about what is possibly somebody else's view. I think I just summed up like all of politics and ukulele playing at the same time. You don't want to know what the problem is? I'll tell you what the problem is. The world according to Brad. Oh boy. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Once again, this is After Hours. This is super casual, all just one pass, one take, no edits. All I do at the end is tidy up the audio so you can hopefully hear it clearly and evenly. Otherwise, I just try and say things I'm not going to regret. Let me play you something else. Um, I heard Brittany's been doing some new recordings or posting some new recordings on her YouTube, and they're very intimate. I love them. They're mic'd very well, and the ukulele sounds fabulous. But you can hear like her body moving against the instrument, and you can like when she shifts positions, you hear the hand movement and stuff. It's very cool. Very well worth a watch because to me, it's been some of the best playing that I've heard from her. It's just solo arrangements, none of the kind of fancy stuff that she does with the looper or has been doing. She a lot of times plays with the backing track or does a loop to go along with what she plays. But this is all solo, very cool. I am super impressed and, just kind of all over again falling in love with her music. And it's fun to hear the intimacy of the recording and like the mic in the room of the person moving. I really don't like when people record with just like a DI plug-in pickup sound because it loses so much of the vibe. I understand how it's practical for performing, and I certainly wouldn't do anything besides have a pickup for performing. But when you're recording and you have a controlled environment where you're like making a video in a room or in a studio or whatever, like mic the thing. Let us really hear what's going on. And even if even if you alter the sound a little bit and compress it so that it's, maybe not the most pure sound that you could get, just having that feel of the room and the person playing the instrument and the movement and everything, I think that's really cool. And Tobias, when he did Bayan Sovier, I can't remember how he said it, but the album he did with the double bass and the ukulele, same thing, just live mics in a room, very intimate. You can hear the instruments moving and as they shift and play around. It's like it's real music, very well captured, and it's a killer album if you haven't heard it. Tobias Elof, Elof and Wamberg, I think is the one. It's very cool. I'll put a link in the podcast description so you can check it out. Definitely a highly recommended ukulele album. But it's just cool when I just stuck the ukulele to my body and pulled it away and made the sound. It reminded me of that. But that's definitely something I look for in ukulele recordings that kind of show me the authenticity of what's being played. It's like, oh, I can hear their body moving on the instrument. It must be real. It's not like overdubbed or, really doctored up that much. today a friend came over and brought his big giant DR brush mower, and he helped. I was expecting to borrow the mower, but he came over and he actually proceeded to mow for 2 hours a patch of big tall grass that I've been looking at knocking down to make room to plant some more taro. And he came in with his mower and knocked it out in 2 hours. Would have taken me days to try and do that by hand or with the weed eater or with the riding lawn mower. Would have been much more labor intensive, but pretty sweet. I should have gotten one of those long ago, saved myself some work. But yeah, gonna be looking forward to planting some more taro at the new moon. I've got some kalo around the house that it's kind of neglected and in the weeds right now, but should be enough to have a bunch of huli to get started and get those cranking and planted in a spot where they'll be a little bit more loved and with some better sunlight and hopefully better growing conditions and make some food. That's definitely my kind of second in command project right now, aside from teaching and the website and through it, the teaching and working on this new video course, which is quite a project. But the broken computer thing is kind of a problem when it comes to content creation. I was feeling all smart because I was recording my audio right onto the computer, but without the computer, I can't record the audio, and I have my setup all dialed, and so I'm just not going to make videos until I get the computer back online. So in the meantime, I have no shortage of things to do up on my place. Try and just always do a little bit as much as possible. It's nice if I can do a little bit every day, but that doesn't always happen. But just have a little bit of that time with the earth and the dirt under my fingers, even though I'm trying to not get dirt under my fingers because that isn't so good for shooting video, because it turns out that, the cleanest you can get your hands after you've had dirt under your fingernails is still pretty dirty. And it doesn't look super good on camera. So I'm trying to wear gloves when I'm planting things or whatever to try and keep the dirt out. But if you notice any dirt in the videos, it's not because I'm not taking care of myself. I really did try to clean my fingernails. It's because I was literally playing in the dirt the day before or even the day of. Because that's what we do. Uncle George always said that music is only 10% or 5% or some very small percentage. It changed every time he said it. But yeah, music is only a little bit, and then the rest is life, and especially farming here. It means a lot to him and to a lot of the Hawaiian community, and that's something that I've really adopted and taken to heart. And it's super important for trying to eat healthy and make sure we can feed ourselves here on the island in case something goes down. We don't have to eat each other. We can eat kalo instead. That's the plan. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me here, this little impromptu podcast. If you have any questions, I feel like this would be a good podcast to answer some random fan mail, kind of an ask me anything, if you will. But really, I haven't solved. I talked about the community problem of not feeling like I have much of an online community right now, because I don't really do social media and I haven't posted anything on YouTube, and most of my email interactions are via newsletter and email. So if you have a question or something that you'd like to hear me talk about, shoot me an email and I'll see what I can do next time I do one of these after-hour podcasts. Please tune in to the actual episodes, which are published on the first and third Saturdays of every month. These after hours things are just kind of in between when I have a chance or when I feel like it. Nice, easy way to do things and keep the ball rolling. I hope this was relaxing and nice for you to listen to wherever you are, whatever time after this recording session you end up listening to it. And just always remember to keep that light in your hand that the music provides and hold that up, keep it burning. I say hold it up kind of metaphorically, but I always try and keep that musical fire burning and just find the beauty in everything that you play and the appreciation in everything you play. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be high quality for you to enjoy it and for it to bring joy to the world. Always try and just provide what brings you happiness and what can bring happiness to others as a musician. And I'll catch you somewhere down the road. Be in touch if you got any thoughts, and be well. Good night, and aloha.